Welcome to this Staff Bitesize session on Looker Studio. So today we're going to go through the essentials of getting set up with Looker for the first time and what it's all about. Okay. So what I've got here is a spreadsheet of UK UFO sightings, all the UFO sightings in the UK. And it's pretty dense. It's pretty massive. There's lots of data hidden within here. And within all sorts of data, there's stories in our data. There's trends. There's things that we can dig out, and we can understand patterns and all this sort of things in terms of analysing. But trying to get that from just this spreadsheet is quite tricky. I'd have to do a lot of filtering, sorting, adding some tables and such to the spreadsheet. I run the risk of actually damaging my data if I accidentally sort in the wrong way. If I accidentally just, sometimes you open a spreadsheet and you accidentally mash the keyboard and you've just changed a cell and you find it hard to see where you've changed. So Looker Studio is fantastic for creating dashboards from our data that we can send out to people, such as this, which allow people a much greater degree of control over seeing what's going on in this data. So you can see this is a dashboard, and I can send this out to various people, and they never get to see my beautiful data sheet. They never get their hands on that. They never risk mucking that up. But they've got all sorts of controls here. They can see UFO sightings over a certain period of time. We could just look between two dates, for example. We could just select here summer. I just want to look at what's going on over summer. Are there more? Are there less? Where are they happening? I've got a map here. I can cycle through and see where the hotspots of UFO sightings are. I could even use that to map against local pubs and see if it has any correlation to these UFO sightings. I've got all sorts of controls here that I can send out to people and let them use this data and find things out for themselves really easy. It's a really nice way of reporting things. So again, I can cycle through here. I can just select different items and everything updates accordingly. It's really nice how it snaps like this. That's just one example of a Looker dashboard. Something a bit more work related is our good friend Phil Bainbridge has got his Looker dashboard here on all his app script tools, and he's got graphs that update in real time, linked to spreadsheets, linked to Google Sheets, that update these graphs and allow people to see the metrics for how much time has been saved via his tools and link off to the relevant tool. We've got different pages here we can cycle through. We don't just have to connect them to Google Sheets, we could connect them to other data sources, so Google Analytics and so on. This one is actually connected to our YouTube channel. So this is our recorded staff training report, which we can use to record which training sessions are most popular, how much watch time there's been, because I can't share my YouTube account with everyone, but I can share this report with everyone. And I'll send this in the post-session emails, but we've got loads of examples from around the University of York here. So this is one from PG Marketing. This is a very vibrant looking dashboard. You can see the degree of control we have over the theme if we want to change up how the theme looks. So this is their dashboard about their online open day. They've got all sorts of graphs and charts in here that people can interact with. We've got the communications team who've actually connected this to a Google Analytics property, and this is checking the traffic, the site traffic of the @york.ac.uk email website, the main university website. We've got all of our data in here, so really easy for them to filter reports and send them out to relevant stakeholders, relevant people that are asking to see reports on certain things. It's not just a messy looking spreadsheet. Loads of examples in here. I'm not going to go through them all. I'll link here to this spreadsheet afterwards, so that if you want some inspiration as to what you could potentially use a Looker Studio report for, you've got some inspiration there. Or if you just want to see the different layouts there, you can gather some inspiration from that. But I'm going to jump into a bit of demo here. I'm going to actually create a new Looker dashboard. So to get to Looker Studio, it's a little bit like a workspace app. So it's a little bit like Google Sites and things like that, but it's not a workspace app. These things don't live in your workspace, in your Google Drive like workspace items do. They live in their own area in Looker Studio. So Looker Studio is kind of connected to your Google account. You can see I'm signed in here as normal. And to get to it, we just go to lookerstudio.google.com. And that'll get you to the main page. Now what I will say is I'm going to be demoing lots of things today. I would advise that you don't try and follow along as I'm doing it. Perhaps take some notes, perhaps just have a, sit back and think about how you might use this and use the recording later to catch up on things. But I will link you to some further training afterwards that does have some exercise file packs that you can download and use in your own time to have a practice. So this is our Looker Studio main page, and in here, just like other workspace applications, we've got things that are shared with us, things that are owned by us. We've got all of our recent reports. We've got some templates, so if you wanted to create a Looker report from a template, or again get some inspiration as to how one looks, you could go into the template gallery here. I would say, disclaimer with that, you can sometimes with the template spend more time getting rid of stuff than it is actually useful. But again, have a little play around. But the thing I want to do is just create a new blank template. So if we go to create, and I'm going to go to a report. Now, that's fine, we don't need to worry about that. Now, I've got loads of different things I can connect to a Looker report. So if I go to add data, or in fact, let's go back. I think that's not happy with how I've done that. Let's go report again. We've got loads of different connection options. So we've got Google Sheets, but we've got things like YouTube and so on. Oh, it doesn't help when it runs very slowly like this. Let's have another go. It's always the perils of live demo. Here we go. Google connectors. So we've got loads of different ones here. We can connect to Google Analytics, something from a file that we upload. So if we want to use an Excel sheet, we can. We're going to go simple today, and we're going to just start with a Google Sheet. Okay. So I'm going to go to Google Sheet, and I can search all the spreadsheets I've got. The one that I know I want is this Research Awards sheet. Okay. I'm just going to jump into that sheet quickly to show you what we're working with. This is just something we downloaded. This is just all the research awards offered to universities in the North and Northeast. And again, it's quite a busy looking data sheet, but we've got some breakdowns of awards and how much was awarded for different institutions across the North and Northeast. So that's what I'm connecting here. So I'm going to connect this sheet, and I could connect just a specific sheet. I'm going to connect this first tab of my Google Sheet for now. We've got some options. Use first row as headers. Yeah, so I had a first row in that sheet that had headers. If I wanted to just include a specific range and not that entire sheet, I could do that and filter that to just a specific range in that sheet. For now, we're going to have the entire sheet. And we're going to add this. And then we're going to get into our canvas, and we can see how we can actually go about creating and editing this dashboard. Here we go. So this looks a little bit scary for the first time you see it. This is the Looker Studio editor. This is the dashboard. If you've ever used Google Sites before, it's a little bit similar to that in that this is our editor view. Then if I hit the view button, this is what the report would look like to other people when I send it out. Now, obviously, it looks fairly boring at the moment. By default, Looker will bounce you this table in, and it will try and kind of do its best to guess what it thinks you're gonna want. You could just delete this, but we're gonna keep it there for now. But what we've got here is just our editor. So we can add pages, we can add charts and things, and I'll come to that in a bit. We can add controls. The very first thing that I want to do though is check what's going on with my data, because this has pulled in some bits like the funding organization name and the record count, but I don't know if it's understanding exactly what's going on in my data sheet. So the very first thing I would advise with any Looker Studio project from a Google Sheet or an Excel file is go into Resource, Manage Added Data Sources, and edit the data source that you have just added. The reason I say this is because we can see that we had a field here called award pounds, and I know that in my sheet that this should be in currency. This should be, instead of a number, I could change this to be currency GBP. I want to make sure it understands what data types I'm working with. For instance, if on my end date here it had that read as text, then I would want to go and change that to a date. I might perhaps want to even go into the sheet itself and think, oh, is that actually formatted as a date? Is that really a date, or do I need to change that? So yeah, we're going to have a think about our fields here. So again, this is the main thing I would do to check first off. I think I'm just about happy with that for now. If I was doing this for real, I would probably spend a bit more time, like here we go, expenditure pounds again. Let's change that to a currency. Okay. So for the purpose of the demo, I'm going to move on from this, but it's just that warning to go and check your data has come in correctly. Okay. And then let's look at what we can start doing with this chart. So we've got a really basic chart added for now. And on the right hand side, I have got all my headers. Underneath my data tab, these are all the headers that were in my sheet. The award pounds, the lead RON name, which was our universities, and so on. And as I click on this table, I have got here something called a dimension and something called a metric. These are basically the things that we can edit and we can adapt to see what's going on here. Now, a dimension is basically a category of data. It's one of these things here. Could be my award pounds I want to have in there. It could be my lead RON name. And we can change this by just either adding or just dragging across. So watch what happens to this table when I replace the funding organisation name with the lead RON name. There we go. We've changed it now so that I've got University of Leeds. Now, bear in mind, I've got University of Leeds sometimes in capitals and not in capitals. We'll come to that later because there's some dodgy data going on in that sheet. So we need to clean our data. We'll come back to that later. But that's what my dimension is. It's the thing I want to kind of analyze. Now, my metric is sort of the thing I want to measure. Do I want to count it up? Do I want to get an average of it? Do I want to get a sum of it? What do I want to do? Now, I could, just the same way as I did my dimension, I could drag something into this field here. So instead of seeing how many records, how many times does University of Leeds or University of Sheffield occur, I'm going to change this to award pounds. Drag it in, and let's see. Oh, look at all that money. I can see now a breakdown really easily of how much has been awarded to each of these institutions. And all that was just from dragging and dropping. And I could have more than one column here. I could have loads of columns here. In fact, I'm going to jump out to a Blue Peter version, one we did earlier. This is where we're going to aspire to eventually, having all sorts of just charts. We could have a chart, we could have time series and all sorts of things there. And all done in the same way by dragging in dimensions and metrics to other things. So that is my basic chart, but a chart's a bit boring. We could do a chart anywhere, couldn't we? We could do this sort of basic thing anywhere. Let's spice it up a bit, and let's do a pie chart. Yes, it seems a bit like Tableau. In that basic report, it is essentially a bit like a Tableau that we can filter out, but let's spice it up a bit. Let's bring in a pie chart. So we can add our charts by our add a chart button up here, or in the top menu. I prefer this menu here because it gives me the visualization of what they all look like, and as I hover over, it tells me what they are. So I'm going to bring in a pie chart, and this is my canvas, and I can place this wherever I like, a bit like a Google site. You can see I've been dragging things around, I've been resizing them and so on. And it's done that same thing again. It's tried to put in the funding organisation name, and that's not so useful to me. So let's bring in our lead RON name again in our dimension. Okay, so we can see who's got the biggest slice of the pie here again. And again, I can change this to be all sorts of other things. I like the award pounds one as a metric again. Let's bring in our awards pound there. And I can have loads of these sitting across the canvas. I could have multiple pages by adding a page, so we can spread our canvas over several different pages. But what really helps people is having controls, because then we're going to give people the option to filter through this data however they like. So a control is basically like a switch sort of thing. So let's bring one in. Let's start really simple with the drop-down list. Just as I did with my chart, I can place it wherever I like. I'm going to do it nice and above this chart here. Okay. Now, similar to our table, we can choose what we show in this drop-down. It's been clever and it knows it wants to filter by lead RON name again. Let's go to view and see how this would look for the other person on the other end. Well, I've got some overlap, which isn't very nice, but This means when I send this report out to people, people can flick to say, oh, I just want to see University of Leeds and Sheffield versus each other. And there we go, we're allowing people that interactivity with our data to kind of find out the stories from it themselves. It's really useful having these little controls, and there's tons of them around. I'm going to resize that a little bit, make it a bit neater, move that down there. I could even, if I'm adding multiple things across this page, I could say that I want this control to just interact with this table. Okay, so I'm just using control. So I'm selecting one, I'm using control to select the other thing, right click it and group, and now we've grouped that control to that particular chart. I could have another control there. For instance, I quite like the slider one. So let's pop the slider down. Ooh, let's put it up there, in fact. Okay, and I'm going to take off my filters for this. So you can see at the top here, I've added that filter, but let's get rid of it. And let's go for them all. Sometimes you have to do it a couple of times for it to take effect. In fact, let's just go to reset. Will that work? Oh, it's not quite happy. There we go. Come on. Sometimes it does get a bit fiddly, this. All right, well, let's just leave it at that for now. I'm struggling with getting my filters off there. I've done too many filters, I think. But I could use this little slider in conjunction with, again, another metric. So I've got my project reference here. That's not so useful. But if I wanted to do my award pounds, I could have a little slider so I could look between certain values. So in my view here, I could change between, well, what about projects that have just been approved over 3 million or between 3 million and this range here. And we can see all my values are changing accordingly. And that's kind of the bread and butter of how Looker works, as having controls, having tables and having charts in, and customizing this report how we want. Another thing I might want here is, what about, what can we add? Let's add a chart. Let's add a total. So let's add a scorecard total up here. This is showing me my total awards amount, and it's got it very specific there. But in all of our controls and all of our charts, anything that we add, we've got our setup option here where we can change our metrics and change how they behave and add filters to them. But we also have our style here. So if we want to change how this looks and add formatting to it, if we want to change how it appears in terms of, let's truncate it a little bit, shorten it a little bit, I can choose how this appears. So at the moment, I've got it set like this, but let's say decimal precision, let's do compact numbers. Okay, that shortened it for me. I can change my style of this box. I can change how it looks. I can change its color. I can do all sorts of things to make it look all nice. Okay. So I've mentioned what dimensions are, I've mentioned what metrics are, but what about fields? So down here, I have got all my data that is living within this sheet, but I might not quite have the thing that I want. So at the moment, our lead RON name, and let me just put in, let's get another sheet, another page actually, let's go clean for this. Let's add another chart. Let's add a simple table. I mentioned that I had some duplicated data there by University of Leeds appearing as University of Leeds and University of Leeds all caps. So let's just bring in our lead RON name. As we see there, we've got University of Leeds, University of Leeds, University of Sheffield, all appearing duplicate. A field could allow me sort of a custom data dimension here. I can set up rules a little bit. It's a little bit like formulas in spreadsheets. So I'm going to add a field. I'm going to add a calculated field because I want a new field, a new dimension that I can drag in to kind of combine all of my University of Leeds and so on. So I'm going to add a calculated field. And I can give it a name. So the name is as it appears in our data tab there. And I'm going to call this correct institution name. In fact, I'm going to go no gaps. And then I've got my formula box here. So as I say, this works similar to spreadsheets. So if you know your spreadsheets functions, so things like upper, things like year, things like ifs and counts and so on, we can use those rules here. So I'm going to use a formula for upper, and I'm going to grab in my dimension, which was lead RON name. And this formula is saying anything that appears in lead RON name, format it to be uppercase. That's going to make sure everything in that matches the same type of formatting. We can get very complex with these formulas, of course. This is just a really simple one for now. I'm going to save this, and I'm going to hit finished. And I should see now in my fields, I've now got the correct institution name. So let's have a look at these counts. University of Leeds at the moment is on 1,088 appearances in this chart, in this data series. But we know that's not correct because we've got University of Leeds here. Let's drag in my new calculated field to our dimension. And there we go. We've seen our proper totals now. I've now amalgamated all those duplicates to be correct. I've got University of Leeds appearing 1,116 times. I've got University of Sheffield appearing 1,035 times. Now, this is a kind of a conundrum for yourselves as Looker builders when you get on with this is, do you patch up your dodgy data in Looker or do you patch it up in the sheet? And I would suggest that you patch it up in the sheet. And we'll come on to that a little bit later when we talk about some data rules. Okay. Let's look at some other things I can do now. Now I've got my correct institution name. Let's look at some other things I can add. I'm going to add another page. So let's go to our pages. I'm going to add in some maps. So again, under charts, we've got loads of things. We've got time series. The one I really like is our bubble map to get precise locations. And this can read off longitude, latitude. It can be pretty clever with knowing the place name that you've got. So I'm going to add in a bubble map to this page. And you can see it's not happy because I haven't got any dimensions in there yet. But I'm going to add in that calculated field we had, our correct institution name, to our location. And there we go, I've got a map. I can see all the locations in this data sheet really easy. That would be quite a complex thing to do in any other piece of software, but there we go. It's read it really nicely and easily. And we could add controls with that as well so that people could filter through different locations. Yeah, all sorts of things we can do. But this is looking a pretty plain dashboard at the moment. What about our formatting? What about other things that we can add that aren't all sorts of complex charts than that? Again, if I go to Insert, I have got simple things just in terms of text boxes and images. So I'm going to add a title to this page now. Add a text box. I'm going to style it to be right over the top here. And it's very small at the moment. Let's bump up that font nice and large. And we're going to call it the same thing as this sheet's called. Research awards offered to universities in the North and Northeast. Again, I can do some sorts of editing on this. It's a little bit too big at the moment, so I can shrink it down. And again, like I say, it's quite similar to a Google site in that level of kind of drag and drop things in terms of having a play area to work on and a canvas to edit. I can shift things around to try and neaten this up a little bit. I can change my color of this. I can change the background. So if I want the background to be white, or as it normally is at the moment, if I change it to blue, I can resize it, get this looking a little bit nicer. Let's go for our text color being white now. Okay, looks a little bit plain. What about themes? Can I change anything in terms of its layout? Yeah, I could do a theme and layout. And again, we've got loads of different themes here that we can choose from. I'm quite a fan of things that are darkly coloured, so I would probably go for something like this. You can see I'd need to do some editing on my other areas now. But if you're wanting to style this up, just as we had in some of our examples there from earlier, like our lovely PG marketing one, we can do that from within our themes. We can change our page color, we can change our global colors here, and for each individual item, each thing has got its own style tab. So I can change the style of this pie chart if I want it to be, let's see, if I want to change something like changing the color by slice order, for example, or changing it to just one single color. I find that a bit hard to read. If I want to show certain metrics in there, I can do all of that from the style tab there. Okay, so that's our basic how to build a report. We add in a data source of some kind. We add in our charts and our controls. We change our dimensions. We change our metrics. We change our styling. We change our look of the thing. But what we can also do is change our filters. So on this tab here, I've got this connected to that entire data sheet. I've got it connected to everything in there, but I might only want on my report to show data from a certain time range. Now I could give people the control to do that and allow them to do that themselves with the date control, as we've seen, or I could add a filter to this overall chart. I could say add a filter on this chart, include in our, where's it gone, our correct institution name dimension, only show things that are, or in fact let's change this to our date, sorry, let's go to our start date. Let's say our start date, only show things that are greater than, and choose our start date. So I'm going to say only show me things that come after 2021. Say 1st of November 2021. Okay, and then this is applying that filter to that chart for people on the other end. We're hiding all of our data that is before 2021, and we're showing people just the data after 2021. Give it a second. Oh, that's not a good example of a filter because I think our research filters actually start after that date. But that would apply that global filter to this chart. And then when we link people out to this, the view version of our Looker dashboard, they would be able to, they would only see the things that I have filtered. Okay, so filters are really useful for kind of having your control over it. Now I've been making a bit of a mess here, but let's actually go into our Blue Peter version from earlier and show you again some of the ranges that we could do here. We've got our just chart version. We could also have something where we have a sheet where we use those filters to isolate things just offered by Newcastle University. So as I said with the filters there, this has been filtered so it's just showing Newcastle University. There's no control for me here to get rid of that. It's been decided for me. But we've got our pie charts as normal. We've got our record counts and some basic charts there. We've also got a different version of the map here, which is a heat map, which is showing the hotspots over here. And as you can tell, they're kind of localized over city centres where our institutions are. But we can also see kind of the hotspots outside of those institutions and our smaller institutions alongside our record count. We've got a time series, so again we can see how things appear over time. We'll give it a second. Sometimes it is a little bit slow if you've got a big data source like this. So this is a bit of a weird one, a kind of a bubble map. I think this one's always a bit slow, but a traditional time series here where we can see the hotspots of when these research awards are being sent out, and we can see that they obviously come in spikes as things are awarded in that way. We've got community charts, so alongside our built-in ones we've got loads of community charts that are kind of people's own creations. Now This is a Sankey chart. We can see the relational the relational patterns between different funding bodies and their institutions. But our disclaimer with this is, with the community charts, if you do start delving into those, don't use it with any sensitive data, because we don't know who's going to be actually processing that data. So just be aware of that. We've got our top people, our about, and we've got our kind of our different way of navigating this dashboard with our pages at the top. But again, it makes it much easier for people to understand what's going on with your data here. So this is useful to me at the moment, and I might use this for my own analysis, but at the moment it's not shared with anyone. And of course, the best thing about all Google Workspace applications and all Google Cloud features and things like that is being able to collaborate on it with other people and being able to share it out to people. So just as we can with our workspace items, I've got the share button at the top here. And I could share this with a specific person. So I've got the fake me in my test account here. And I've got levels of permissions there. So I can say that I'm sharing it with just one specific person to view. So if you don't want a report that's viewable by lots of people, you're just sending it out to individuals, then you can do that. You can add individuals, or you can add them as an editor. So we could say, let's work on this together and work on it just as we would a Google Doc, for instance. We've also got our general access, so just as we have with our Google Docs and so on. We could say, I want this report to be available to just the people at the University of York, to be unlisted, so just those specific people I add, or public. If I'm looking to embed this on a Google site, for example, or embed this on a web page anywhere, or on the wiki, then yeah, I could set this to be public, and I've got those options again to allow people to be viewers or editors. I'm going to send in the chat our Blue Peter version from earlier. I'll just make sure it's shared with people. So there we go. If anyone wants to have a little play around with this, maybe you want it for later, there you can. That's in the chat. We also have some sharing settings. So again, your data might have certain levels of sensitivity. Sometimes people worry about, can people access all this data? And they've only got access to what you allow them to access. Thinking about your filters, thinking about the series you've connected in that spreadsheet. If I go to settings here though, I do have some deeper options to lock it down. I could prevent people from editors from changing access and adding new people. So I could say, you know, I'm just the person who decides who gets to see this. I could disable downloading, printing and copying for viewers. Of course, in this day and age, anyone can just take a photo of the screen or a screenshot, so that's only semi-effective. We could disable viewers from viewing and creating alerts, or disable viewers from generating slides with Gemini in Looker. So if you're against AI, and I know quite a few people are, and you want to avoid ever touching Gemini, you can disable that there. So we do have those options to send that out to people. And then you can just, you know, as anything, you can copy the link to it and host that link somewhere or send people the link. We also have some other options. We can schedule the delivery of it. So if you're busy working on it and you want to actually wait, you know, a couple of weeks to schedule it, you can. If you want to embed it anywhere, you can enable that and get the code there to embed this on a Google site. And what is quite useful for some people is actually just downloading the report as a PDF. So having a printable version. So if you're looking to create something visual in terms of posters or anything like that, you can download that as a PDF there and have a couple of options there and perhaps scale it up, maybe even port it across to a Word document, whatever. But you've got those options there to send it out. Now, at the moment, this is where it differs from Google Sites slightly. This is anyone that I send the link to is going to see updates in real time. So I could send out the link and then shift this here and people would see that in real time. And that could be a bit messy if we're actually looking to continue working on this report as it's already sent out. So there's a couple of things we can do. One is pause updates. Pausing updates will pause any live data updates. It won't pause cosmetic changes and structural changes to the report. I can move this across and they would still see that. But if this was connected to a sheet that's connected to a Google form, for example, I could pause updates and it's not going to collect that new data. So if I want just a snapshot in time, I could use that feature. If I want to pause how it, all the edits on how it looks, then if I go to File and I go to Publishing Settings, then I can turn on Manual Report Publishing. And that just means that it's going to, as it says here, it will publish the current version of this report, but it won't have a live version for people. Okay, so that's kind of your safe bet if it's going to be something that you're going to continue mucking around with quite a bit after you've sent it out. Okay. So yeah, that's our creating it. That's our basics of how it looks. We've seen the interface, the dashboard. We've seen how we add controls. Obviously, it can scale up massively if you get into loads of custom fields and so on. If you start getting complicated with some of the charts that you add, it's really a bit of a digital playground in terms of reporting here. But I said I would have a little look at data, because dashboards are only as good as the data you put in them. And not all data is good data. We could have, as we've got in our bad data sermon here, we could have all sorts of inconsistent data. We can have Elvis in our data sheet styled up 6 different ways. And that's no good for our Looker dashboard, because we're going to end up doing loads of patching in our dashboard. So our real kind of emphasis before playing with Looker is get your data clean. For example, like merged cells, they don't have anything in them. Like a merged cell is one cell plus a blank cell. So you're going to return loads of nulls in there. We need clean data for our dashboards. In terms of how we can do that, let's look at our sheet again here. Here's my raw data. Now I might do some patching up in here. Earlier I did that kind of calculated field to get the nice version of these duplicated names where things are in capital. But what I could do instead is actually just in the sheet have a helper column. Let's call this institution. And I could use some spreadsheet formulas. I could have equals proper. So this is saying it's going to capitalize each word in a string. So we'd have capital D for Durham, capital U for university. And I'm saying I want you to do this for all of C. So I'm going to say C2. Oops. Oh, sorry, I'm on D here. I've done it the wrong way around. D. I'm going to drag this formula all the way down that column. And we can see like PXD limited here now is changed there. That saves me patching it up in Looker. It makes my life a whole lot easier having the clean data in here. I could do that with all sorts of things like dates. Or the other thing I could do is having a separate tab, as we've got here, for Looker Studio. I might use a query function to pull out just the strings of data that I want for this dashboard into a separate sheet where I can fiddle around with them a little bit here. Then I'm leaving this tab alone, the raw data, but in here I'm pulling out, I'm saying query data from that tab there, pull out A, B, D, E, F, our columns from that spreadsheet. I want those just in here, and I'm going to connect just this sheet to Looker instead. Because as I say, your dashboard's only as good as the data within it. So you really do have to have a little think about what you might be connecting here, and you have to put a bit of legwork into tidying up your sheet to be in an appropriate format for Looker before you go connecting it.